plus 2, which is 2. So then what's our point here? 0, 2. So we stay at 0 and go up 2. And lastly, we're going to plug in 1, so the absolute value of 1 plus 2, which is 1 plus 2, which is 3. So then what's our point here? 1, 3. So we go to the right one and up 3. Once we have our 3 points, we connect them with a V. So for all of these absolute value graphs, you need 3 points. So for every single one, you need to plug in 3 points. All right, let's look at number 2. So remember, we take what's on the inside and set it equal to 0, and that's going to be our middle point. So we have x plus 3 is equal to 0. How would we solve for x here? Subtract 3. So x is equal to what? Negative 3. So on our chart here, negative 3 is going to go in the middle. Now what's a number smaller than negative 3? Negative 4. And what's a number bigger than negative 3? Negative 2. So we're going to plug in these 3 numbers. So first let's plug in negative 4. So the absolute value of negative 4 plus 3 plus 1. What is negative 4 plus 3? Negative 1. And what's the absolute value of negative 1? 1. So this is 1 plus 1. So then what's our point here? Negative 4, 1. Because we plugged in negative 4 and got 1. Oh, we got 2 because it was 1 plus 1. My bad. So this is 2. So negative 4, 2. So we're going to go to the left 4 and up 2. Next we're going to plug in negative 3. So we have negative 3 plus 3 in our absolute value plus 1. What's negative 3 plus 3? And 0 plus 1? 1. So this is negative 3, 1. So we go to the left to negative 3 and up 1. Now we plug in negative 2. So the absolute value of negative 2 plus 3 plus 1. What is negative 2 plus 3? Positive 1, and then the absolute value of positive 1 is 1. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. So then what's our point here? Negative 2, 2. So we go to the left 2 and up 2. Now we connect these 3 dots with our V. Any questions on these 2? So you guys are good with absolute value graphs? Okay. So let's move on to our piecewise function graphs. So I want to do 2 and 3 because most likely on your quiz you will have one with 3 parts. So for each part here, you have to plug in 2 numbers. What's the first number we're going to plug in for our first part? Negative 2. We always plug in what it gives us. At negative 2, are we going to have an open circle or a closed circle? A closed circle, because Anytime we see a less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, that means it's a closed circle. If it's just greater than or less than, it would be an open circle. Let's plug in -2. So what's our y going to be if we plug in -2? Can we plug in -2? Do we have an x to plug it into? So when we plug in -2, we can't plug it in, so it's just -4. So anytime we don't have an x to plug it into, it's just the number that it gives us. So then what's our point here? -2, -4. So we're going to go to the left 2 and down 4 and put a closed circle there. What can we plug in next here? -3. So this says x is less than -2. We can plug in any number less than -2. So let's plug in -3. What's our y going to be? -4. So then what's our point? -3, -4. Now which direction is our arrow going to go? To the left. Perfect. So we see our little inequality here points to the left, so we're going to go left. So we put our point at -3, -4, and go to the left. Once we graph it, we can move on to the next part. So now we're looking at part 2. What are we going to plug in for x into part 2? We're going to plug in the two numbers that it gives us, so -2 and 2. So -2 and 2. At these 2 points, are we going to have an open circle or closed circle? An open circle. So at both of these points, we're going to have an open circle. And since they are the middle part, we connect our two dots with a line. So let's see what those points are going to be. So we have -2 minus 2. What's -2 minus 2? -2 minus 2. Come on, people. -4. So then what's our point here? -2, -4. So we put an open circle at -2, -4. It overlaps with our other point, but that's fine. Next we plug in 2. So we have 2 minus 2. What's 2 minus 2? 0. So our next point is 2, 0. So we're going to go to the right 2 and stay on 0 and put an open circle. And we said we just connect these two dots with a line. Any questions for this middle part? Ready for the third one? Yep. So let's look at our third piece. What's the first number we're going to plug into our third piece? What are we going to plug in here? 2. We always plug in what it gives us. So we plug in 2. Are we going to have an open circle or a closed circle here? A closed circle, because it's greater than or equal to. So let's plug in 2. We have -2 times 2 plus 4. What's -2 times 2? -4. And -4 plus 4? 0. So then what's our point here? 2, 0. So we go to the right 2 and stay on 0 and put a closed circle there. Now what else can we plug in here? Three. Any number greater than 2. So let's plug in 3. So negative 2 times 3 plus 4. What's negative 2 times 3? Negative 6. And what's negative 6 plus 4? Negative 2. So then what's our point? 3, negative 2. So we go to the right 3 and down 2. Are we going to put in, which direction's our arrow going to go? Left or right?
Left. Right.
Look at our inequality here. Our arrow points to the right. So our arrow here is going to point to the right. So this is our graph for number 2. Practice of piecewise. So let's look at 3. So starting with our first point, what's the first number we're going to plug in?
2.
What's the first number we're going to plug in?
Oh, so did you go? Negative 4.
Negative 4. What is our y when x is negative 4?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. So then what's our point?
Negative 4, negative 2.
Negative 4, negative 2. Do we have an open circle or closed circle here?
Open.
Open. So we go to the right 4, the left 4, because it's negative 4, and down 2, and put an open circle. Now we need to plug in another number. What else can we plug in for our first piece? Negative 5. Any number less than 4. What's our y going to be?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. So our point is negative 5, negative 2. So we go to the left 5 and down 2. Which direction is our arrow going to go?
To the right.
To the left.
Oh.
So our arrow points left. All right, once we graph it, we can move on to our second part. Yes. Yep.
So do you graph how one so for the pink one, how is the first one an open circle and the second one is closed?
So the only thing that's a good question because I've noticed a lot of people make that mistake. So let me erase here. So the only thing that determines whether it's an open or closed circle is this number here. So our number at 4 is either going to be open or closed. This one and this one are going to be open or closed, and this one's going to be open or closed. The number that we pull out of thin air, so this one that we came up with, it's not going to be opened or closed. It's going to go through this point. So the second number that we plug in here is going to determine which direction our arrow is going to go. So only these numbers that it gives us is where we have an open or closed dot. The second number tells us that our arrow is going to go left. And then also we look at this inequality here. So for the first one, we see that this is a less than sign, and this arrow points in the left direction. So that's how we know our arrow is going to go left. So like for the second one, we have, it tells us -4 and 0. So we're going to either have an open or closed circle at -4 or 0. So let's move to our second piece. So we are going to plug in these two numbers, -4 and 0. At -4, do we have an open or closed circle? Closed circle. And then at 0, do we have an open or closed circle? Closed, because it's less than or equal to. That equal to means that it's a closed circle. Okay, so let's plug in -4. So we have a -4. What is -4?
Positive 4.
+4. So then what's our point?
-4, 4.
-4, 4. So we go to the left 4 and up 4 and put a closed circle there.
How come you wouldn't just do what you do with the other ones? The ones on the other ones. They gave you -4. Because when you just put -4, then it'd be -4, -4.
We plug it into here. So I take the -4 and plug it into the function that it gives us. I'm plugging it into x. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Next we have 0. So when we plug in 0, we get a -0, so this is just 0. So then what's our point here? 0, 0. So we put a closed circle at 0, 0. Do we have an arrow here, or just connect the two dots? Connect the two dots. Every time it's a middle piece, we just connect the two dots. Ready to move on to the next? So we have x and y. What's the first number we're going to plug in for our third piece here? So we plug in 0. We have 4 minus 0 now. So what's 4 minus 0? 4. So what's our point? 0, 4. So we stay on 0 and go up 4. Do we have an open or closed circle here? Open. So we put an open circle at that point. Now the next point we're going to plug in is one that we just make up. So we're going to plug in a number greater than 0. Since we make it up, it's not going to be an open or closed circle. It's going to be an arrow going through that point. So the only ones that have an open or closed circle that we really care about, the open or closed, are these numbers in here. When we make up a number, like we're doing now, it's a closed circle, but it just goes through that point. So the point really doesn't matter. We're just putting an arrow through that. So what is a number greater than 0? 1. So let's plug in 1. So we have 4 minus 1, which is 3. So what's our point here? 1, 3. Which direction is this arrow going to go? To the right or to the left? Look at the inequality up in our... It goes to the right. So we just look at which direction is this going, and we point it in that direction. Everybody sees up here. So this inequality was open, and we just point the direction in the same direction that our inequality goes. Let me erase this and I'll do it again. So the direction of this tells us which direction we're going to point. So we see that this is a little arrow going to the right, so we're going to point it going to the right. So this goes to the right. So our point is 1, 3. And then we point it going to the right. So this is our piecewise function here. So for every piecewise that we do, every part of it, so here we have 3 parts in the beginning, we have to plug in 2 numbers for each part. So see here, we plug in 1, 2, we plug in 1, 2, we plug in 1, 2. So you have to plug in 3 numbers for each part. If you don't plug in, or 2 numbers for each part. If you don't plug in 2 numbers for each part on your quiz, you're going to get it wrong. Any questions here? So you just have to plug in. See, we plugged in -4 and we plugged in -5. We plugged in -4 and we plugged in 0. Plugged in 0, plugged in 1. We plugged in 2 numbers for each part. If you don't plug in 2 numbers for each part on your quiz, you'll get it wrong. So you have to plug in 2 numbers.
Ms. Carver,
Yes.
can you go to number 1?
I skipped number 1 for the piecewise because I want to have time to go over everything. But I will post the answers to the review on Canvas. So it'll be in a PDF of the answers.
Okay, thank you.
If we have time, I'll go back to it. But you guys will have a piecewise function on your quiz with 3 parts, so I wanted to focus on the ones with 3 parts here. All right. Any other questions on piecewise functions? So here we need to write an equation in slope-intercept form. What is our slope-intercept form? Y is equal to mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So here it gives us our slope and it gives us a point, but what's special about this point? It already has the y-intercept. So anytime we see 0 and a number, that's our y-intercept. So we just plug in. So y is equal to 1/2, because that's our slope, times x plus b. What's our b? What's our b? 4. Any questions on this one? All right, let's look at numbers. This is the answer. That's it. All we had to do was plug in our slope and plug in our y-intercept. Let's look at B. What's special about this point? So -2 is our slope, so that's our m. Do we know what our b is? -5. That's what's special about the point, that it's our y-intercept. So we plug it in. So what's our equation going to be here? Y is equal to -2x plus 5. Oh, minus 5, because it's a -5. So got to be careful with your signs. I think you said plus 5. But it's a -5. All right, let's look at C. So we have passes through 0, -5, and 5, 0. So here, this is our B, but it doesn't give us our slope. How do we find the slope? What's our slope formula? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we have our x1, y1, x2, y2. Now we plug everything in. So our x2 is 0, or y2 is 0, sorry. Our y1 is -5. Our x2 is 5, and our y1, or x1 is 0. What is 0 minus a -5? Positive 5. And then what's 5 minus 0? 5. What is 5 over 5? 1. So our slope here is 1. So once we get our slope and we have our b, we can just plug them in. So what would our equation be here? Y is equal to m. So our slope is 1. We don't have to write the 1 if it's just in front of the x. And then minus 5. Any questions here? All right, let's look at D. So again, it gives us 2 points. So we have to find the slope. So we have our x1, y1, x2, y2. Plug it into our slope formula. So we have y2, which is negative 2, minus y1, which is 2, and x2, which is negative 4, minus 0. What is negative 2 minus 2? Negative 4. And then negative 4 minus 0. Negative 4. What's negative 4 divided by negative 4? Can we simplify this? It's 1. It simplifies to 1. So our slope is 1. So how do we write this in slope-intercept form? Y is equal to x plus, what is our b? What's our y-intercept? 2. Anytime we see 0 and then a number, that's our y-intercept. So x plus 2. We have to find what the slope is.
Oh, okay. Because we just put in x for 1.
Right, so we would put a 1 here in front of the x,
Okay, yeah.
but we wouldn't need to write it. But if our slope was, let's say, 2, then we would need to write that. So that's why we had to do that formula. Somebody at home said that it was a positive 2, but our equation is a negative, or minus in the middle, so that's why it's minus positive 2. All right, any other questions on this page? You will have a question on the quiz that looks like this, and you will have one that looks like this where you have to find the slope. All right, next we have write the equation in point slope form. What is point slope form?
Y plus y2 equals x equals x1 plus 2.
So y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1.
We all know these steps, right?
Yes. All right. So now let's plug in what we have. So we have our slope, which is m, and our point is x1 and y1. So let's plug them in. We have y minus y1. So what happens to a minus negative 6? What does it become?
Wait, what?
Minus negative 6. What is 2 negative signs?
Oh,
A positive. So this becomes y plus 6 is equal to negative 2 times x minus 7. And this is our answer. All you're doing here is plugging in. Any questions on this one? All right, let's look at B. So our slope is 1/2, and it passes through -5, -1. So again, we're going to plug it into our point slope form. So we have our m, our x1, and our y1. So what's our equation going to be here once we plug everything in?
Y minus 1.
Remember, it's y minus y1, which our y1 is
Oh.
-1. So when it's a minus, negative, what does it become? A plus.
Okay.
So y plus 1 is equal to, now we plug in our 1/2, times x minus -5, so this becomes a plus 5. So this is your answer here. All right, let's go to the next. We need to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So here it gives us the slope, and it passes through a point. So since it gives us a point and slope, we plug it into point slope form, and then we need to put it into slope-intercept form. So we have y minus y1, which is 4, is equal to our slope, so -2, times x minus x1, which is 2. Now we want this to be slope-intercept form, so y is equal to mx plus b. So we need it to be y is equal to, what's the first thing we need to do here to get it into slope-intercept form? Distribute the -2. So we have -2x plus 4. What's the next thing we have to do? Add 4. So y is equal to -2x plus 8. That's our answer. So on your quiz, you will see one like this, where you just plug in your slope and your point and leave it in point slope form. And you will see one like this, where you have to change it to slope-intercept form. Ready for the last page? Right, so we need to write the equation of a line in point slope form. So point slope form is y is equal to y, so this is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. What's our slope here? So it's parallel to this line. Our slope, when it's parallel, is the same thing. So our slope is 1/2. And it passes through this point. So this is our x1 and this is our y1. So now we plug in. So we have y minus 7 is equal to 1/2 times x plus 3. Any questions here? Alright, what about when it's perpendicular? What would our slope be here? So we have a line that's perpendicular to this line and passes through point 2, -5. What is our slope here? If our slope in this one is what? What's our slope in this line that it gives us? -3. So when it's perpendicular, we need the opposite reciprocal. So opposite means that it goes from negative to positive, or positive to negative, and then reciprocal means that we flip it. So if this is technically -3/1, what would our slope be? 1/3. So we change the sign and we flip it. So now we take our slope and we take our point and plug it into point slope form. So y minus -5. So minus a negative would become plus is equal to 1/3 times x minus 2.